What's up, guys? Doug Polk here, and we're back for another episode of Poker Hands. And today we're going to take a hand that was suggested to me from one of the fans here in the chat. On that note, let's jump into this one between Phil Hellmuth and Michael Mizrachi.
Buddy, I re-raised to 30 when you put
21,000 left.
You had 23
I'll
in,
bet
and
you,
I put
I'll
in
bet you
30.
3,000.
We had 53,000 in.
Yeah, more than 21.
I don't give a I knew you had ace king. And the bottom line is I knew you weren't going to. I could have made a deal with him.
Like a 50 ball. He's got to hope you have ace king. Pray and hope you have
He
ace
didn't
king.
have that much in front of him. I had 53 in there. How much does he have in front of him?
I started the hand with 90.
90. You have 90 here, right?
No, I
You
lost.
only lost 10 in the hand. 25, 45, 50.
I'm just going to warn you out of the gate, we have some ill-advised play on many of the streets here in this hand, but that's what makes it a little more interesting than maybe some of our standard spots. Our action begins with Phil Hellmuth opening it up in the hijack with ace-4 off, and I probably don't have to tell you guys this at this point, but this is not a hand you should open from this far away from the blinds. Anyway, he opens it up to 3.5 big blinds, or $1,400. The cutoff folds, and now Mizrachi decides to take a flat with 7-5. This is a clear as day fold. You know, I know you have position. I know you are going to maybe over-realize and you get to hit some hands. But come on, dude, 7-5 off. At this point, you're playing almost every button. In fact, if you knew someone was going to play like this, you could open stronger hands knowing you're going to get action, and that would be a nice way to adjust to them. Anyway, he calls, the blinds fold, and let's take a flop with two hands that shouldn't have gotten there.
You want to bet on that?
You haven't played another hand.
Hellmuth flops aces
I
up.
only played for the 20 in the middle. You idiot over here. Can't even add.
That's 4,000.
I should have just gambled it, and then I'd have heard him go through the roof forever, how horrible I was, and then I'd be able to say how great a read I had.
Grinder's gonna call this with 7
I
high.
didn't think he would call.
Float alert.
The flop comes ace-queen for rainbow, and we have a classic cooler type setup that you know is going to build a big pot. Phil Hellmuth decides to go ahead and bet with his top and bottom, which is definitely the right play. You want to build that pot, get some value, and allow yourself an opportunity to have some good hands along with some bluffs like some straight draws or backdoor flush draw type of holdings. Now over to Michael Mizrachi, and at this point, if you're going to fold anything on ace-queen 4, I feel like it should be 7-5. In fact, it's hard to think of many worse hands. I mean, I guess hands like 8-7, but not if they have a backdoor flush draw, then I'd rather have those. Realistically, this is one of the worst possible hands you could consider calling. And of course, at this point, he decides to take a turn. So let's take a turn.
I thought my read was right, and I didn't think he would call.
Good card for Michael.
Check.
My read was right.
He's now got an open ender, and Hellmuth has slipped it to him. Grinder bites for 6,000,
I didn't say take it.
and Phil just calls.
The turn comes in offsuit 6, and now things are starting to come together for Mizrachi. He actually has a draw, which is a lot more than he had going on the flop, and he can make the nuts on either an 8 or a 3. Also, he can bluff on some certain runouts, so maybe things aren't going so badly after all. At this point, Phil Hellmuth decides to check, which does seem sort of strange to me. He has top and bottom. His opponent is very unlikely to have him beat because if he had a hand like ace-queen or queens or aces, those hands are likely going to 3-bet pre-flop. So unless his opponent has a hand like ace-6 or 4-4 or 6-6, he's going to be ahead. So at this point, he should be looking to bet and get some value. By check calling here, sure, maybe you protect some of your weaker hands that might want to check call. But the problem is you don't allow yourself room to get value from all of those weak holdings like, you know, maybe 7-5. I will say, if your opponent is floating hands as wide as 7-5 on the flop, maybe trapping the turn's good, but probably use a hand that's either strong enough to raise the river or weak enough to just check call, and not feel like it missed value if the river goes check. Anyway, Hellmuth checks. Mizrachi now bets a $6,000 bet. I think I'd like to see a little bit of a larger bet size here, but this is also okay. It's around half pot. So, you know, I think this is reasonable, and the hand selection is certainly correct. You want to bluff with some of these straight draws that haven't gotten there in conjunction with some of your top pairs. So this hand, if you do call flop, does make sense to bet turn. And now Hellmuth, facing this bet, has a maybe some reasonable chance of check raising. That could be an okay play, but in general, you're going to want to go for the check call. If you check raise and get called, things can get very dicey on the river and you're not always going to be ahead. By check calling, you keep the bluffs in and allow yourself an opportunity to make some money on the river. So all in all, the turn, I'd like to see Hellmuth bet, but as played, this is okay. Let's take a river.
So good.
Oh boy.
4,000, zip 100 ball in there knowing that he doesn't have it.
I better
I
bet
think
some
that's
here.
strong.
I'm a little tilted here. Let me bet 16,500.
I'm tilted.
If Phil thinks he's tilted now, wait till he sees what happens next.
Phil's playing the best he's capable of playing.
Mike's playing his B plus game. I'm very disappointed.
Still betting.
Wait, where's Jean Robert? What's Jean Robert playing?
I'm just very demoralized.
Like I say, it is demoralizing. How do I get into tomorrow's episode? The next week's taping of Poker After Dark.
I'm a little less demoralized now.
Wow, I got my balls back. I love it. My reads are back. My balls are back.
Is this for real? And I have the ace of hearts, so, I mean...
109 in the pot. Mizrachi can barely contain himself.
The river comes in offsuit 3, and you already know Phil Hellmuth's going to get real steamed up from this. That's just who he is. At this point, though, he decides to do something that makes absolutely no sense, and after check calling the turn, basically signifying, hey man, I've got an okay hand, I got a reasonably strong hand, he decides to lead the river, which does not make sense to me. If you want to build the pot, just bet the turn. This is just too fancy. What hand could Phil Hellmuth have that he'd want to bluff with like this? He almost can't have a bluff. I mean, is he going to bet a queen in the flop, the check call turn to lead river? No. So this bet doesn't make any sense. It's hard to bluff here. It's almost always going to be a thin value bet. And also, a lot of his really strong hands would just bet the turn. This is a nightmare and a terrible line. It also opens you up to getting raised, and frankly, you're going to be in a lot of trouble if you get raised. It's going to be hard for me to tell you what you should do because I don't know what your range looks like, but if you do get raised here, what are you going to do with hands like ace-4? It's going to get tough for you. And as it just so happens, 7-5 on this run out is a raising hand. And the action goes over to Mizrachi, and at this point he counts out his cash, almost counting out how much money he wants to win, and rips it in on Hellmuth. Now, in these spots on the river, generally I break it down for you. I tell you what you could do. I tell you what you shouldn't do. And this is a spot where I have no idea what Hellmuth should do because I would never be here and I don't know what other hands Hellmuth is going to be trying to play like this. Assuming Hellmuth is going to play other good hands like this, maybe he can let ace-4 go. Maybe if he's going to have ace-queen, maybe if he's going to have queens, maybe if he's going to have a hand like ace-6, maybe he can let this hand go. But I can't really say that because I don't know what his hands are like. Imagine this. If he always bets hands that are stronger than ace-4 on the turn, and then check calls hands like ace-4, this could be the strongest hand Phil Hellmuth can possibly have here. And if that is the case, he has to call, or else Mizrachi can just run him over by bluffing in this spot. I'm not sure Phil Hellmuth knows what he should do, and I certainly don't know what he should do. Let's see what happens.
You hit an offsuit 6 on the turn, really? And then moved in?
I love the grinder.
I love the grinder. He is the joint. He's the man.
There's something with aces and 6s when I have to have ace-4, ace-queen, or a set.
Deep stacked live, boys and girls. Me and the grinder.
I'm not a huge fan of Mizrachi's demeanor here. Generally speaking, when people are bluffing, they stay very quiet and don't say anything and keep a straight face. And when they're talkative and moving around and laughing with their friends, they tend to be more likely to be value betting. I think that he should just be sitting there focused on the hand and not giving away any tells. But maybe he thinks he can tilt Hellmuth into calling, so it could be a calculated play. But will Phil Hellmuth fall for it?
I mean, I might even have to put Brandon Adams on the payroll. He's just,
You know what?
he just fits too well.
Good man. Here, take 100.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate it, man. Very much.
That's a good layout. Oh,
He hit the 5-7. How'd you make a 5-7? Show the 5. Come on. I know. If you showed the bluff, you know we'd have a great game.
I would say a good general rule is if your opponent will show you one card, but not two, and the one kind of implies it was a bluff, it's generally not a bluff, and you made a good laydown. Thank you for joining me here today for Poker Hands, and I want to let you know that our posting schedule is going to be moved around a little bit. I want to experiment with some different days of posting, some different frequencies, but we're going to keep a generally consistent schedule of 3 to 6 videos a week, so stay tuned.